That was. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Pillars of Amar Team Tournament Losers Bracket Finals. I am Beardrass, and I am joined here by Sir Rhino.
Yep, haven't gotten rid of me yet. Still here.
No, not yet. I heard you took over while I got fired temporarily.
Yep, and then I guess you're stepping in for aReNGee as he noticed some kids were on his lawn and had to deal with that.
Yeah, something to that effect. So we are jumping into the matchup between Team Always Lucky versus Team Rage and Sorrow. Our first matchup is Bobbert Joe on the Shimmering Combry list versus Shadowfire on a Feln Control list.
Felon control. I am
Yeah,
familiar with that one.
yeah, Feln Control seems to be your specialty, more or less. What do you have to say about Shadowfire's particular build?
It's greedy and I love it. I like that it's finally gone up to 4 champions of cunning, 2 Varus to get him back. It's great. Also, it looks like a match is going on, but nothing's happened. This is wonderful.
Yeah, Bobbert Joe a little lacking on undepleted power there, so he's going to be lacking. And Shadowfire getting off a very quick Champion of Cunning.
Casual on curve 5/5 flying Aegis. Turns out Champion of Cunning ends games rather quickly. Even though it's a control finisher in this game, it is a wonderful card that's very hard to deal with. And yeah, Bobert's gonna go for the double permafrost eventually plan, but then he still has to deal with the fact that once Shadowfire hits 5 shadow, the other half of the champion shows up. So yeah, it's a wonderfully difficult to deal with card. It's just great.
Yeah, it is very difficult to deal with. I was super impressed seeing you play Champion of Cunning in the Invitational. This card put in a ton of work for you, and we see it putting in a lot of work for Shadowfire right here.
Yeah, we don't know what else is going on in Shadowfire's hand, but we know Bobert Joe's got a lot of cards that really want you to have a board presence, but it's going to be hard for him. Okay, he draws the exact card you'd think he'd want in Desert Marshal, and yeah, he's going to save it here. Just use his power optimally to establish a Xenon Obelisk and hit with the 3/2. I think your other option there is to play Seraph and Desert Marshal the 5/5, but then still doesn't actually remove the 5/5 from the board. So he decides to go this route instead.
Yeah, very true. Just trying to minimize the threats, but still taking a lot of damage. Bobert Joe could get pushed out here very quickly, depending on what card Shadowfire is holding. Feln Bloodcaster, a nice card to get down on the board.
Yeah.
With Shadowfire almost on 7 power, going to be able to activate that and hopefully rip something spicy from Bobbert Joe's deck.
Yeah. Wow. Bobbert choosing to not play Seraph here is a little surprising to me. I mean, you got the obelisk down, I assume, to get it out of like suffocate range. But I guess he'd rather just have stand together here.
Yeah, I guess if he goes Desert Marshal stand together, he can either double block the champion if he wants, or he can double block this Bloodcaster and save both units from dying.
All
but
right,
Shadowfire has something to say about that.
Yeah, Shadowfire's got the Annihilate, which stand together will block. Now Shadowfire has an opening for a second removal spell, just to make these units bounce off each other. This also isn't addressing the elephant in the room of this 5/5 over on the other side, but Bobert's doing what he can here with what he's drawn.
Yes, certainly. And this is actually an interesting observation of how the priority system works, and that both players, if they have fast spells, actually have the opportunity to cast. Had Shadowfire actually waited a little bit longer and held that Annihilate, that could have worked out much nicer for him. We see a Vanquish pulled off the top, though.
Yeah, and then a very aggressive attack there as well, with the 4/3. But I can respect that. You gotta get that damage in while you can. It's not like you're too scared of this 2/5 that's on the board.
Yeah, trying to turn himself into the beatdown deck, Bobbert Joe is lacking a little bit of power, though, unfortunately. Going to need to pick some up, definitely, if he's trying to get to that Shimmer pack.
Yeah, missing power was pretty good there for a couple turns, in that he drew Desert Marshal and Vanquish, which were kind of the exact cards he needed to navigate this spot. But another Xenon Obelisk is not what you're looking for at all here. He's opting to attack with the Seraph because, hey, at least it trades with or does 5 damage, but it means he can't block this Steward on the crackback. So he's basically saying here, I'm okay with doing 5 damage and taking 3 damage here. Uh, One could debate if that's wise or not, but if your plan is, hey, I need to draw power here, need to cast Scouting Party, then taking 3 is not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's not entirely the end of the world. He definitely can block the 3/5 with his Desert Marshal now that it's all buffed up to a 5/4 and at least get a trade. So it's not awful. And pushing the Seraph here is interesting though. I think he's gonna get the trade anyway.
Yeah. The reasoning for that attack is essentially if they have another Death Strike or something, you might as well get the trade with the Steward. As we were saying, all these options we talked about, either get him for 5 and trade him for 3, or you trade it with the Steward before they can find another answer to your Seraph. You're not really concerned about trying to get that Seraph to the late game. Your Scouting Party Shimmer Pack's more than enough to win if you get to that spot.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Bobbert picking up the permafrost here, so probably best that that decision was made to go ahead and trade the Steward of the Past off into the Seraph there.
Mm-hmm.
Would have gotten locked down otherwise. We see a lot of damage getting pushed out of this Desert Marshal though.
Yeah, I mean, from Joe's perspective, though, that's a really aggressive attack considering your opponent has nothing but spells in hand. They cast Wisdom and didn't play any power last turn. Uh, I realize Permafrost doesn't shut off the card draw from the Bloodcaster, but you're still going to 5, and they've got either more threats or spells in hand. This is a dangerous spot.
Yeah, very true. And if Bobber Joe doesn't pick up another power here, he's going to have to rip another card that's going to put in a lot of work. Ooh, and we see the Black Sky Harbinger coming down, and that will pop the Aegis on the Desert Marshal. So this is now open to being killed.
Yep. So he saved the Permafrost for this Black Sky Harbinger, but it means because he drew power, he can't cast a Scouting Party here. And he has to Permafrost the Black Sky Harbinger because if he doesn't, he's going to die. So it was one of those like damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of moments with that Permafrost, where if you had Permafrost a 2/5, you would have taken 2 damage instead because you also swung with the. It was just a rough spot for Bobart overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shadowfire here, unfortunately, not being able to find a removal for this Desert Marshal could have just taken the game here. But Wisdom's into Island's favor, not picking up too much here, deciding what his best course of action is. And now Bobber Joe is going to get to establish the Scouting Party with 4/4 tokens on the way back.
Whoa, yeah. So he's taking this opportunity again to find his attacks where he can. You got to get this damage in. The Scouting Parties are going to make a bunch of rather large Yetis, thanks to all of the obelisks he's drawn. They're all going to be 4/4s here. So no reason to hold back the Marshal. And he's just hoping to dodge the dreaded Witch Storm combo here. But there's no way to play around that.
Yeah, Witch Storm or Double Storm in this case will go ahead and give Shadowfire the game. So trying to find one of those two outs here, but since we haven't seen a snap play, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Shadowfire doesn't actually have the Witch Storm.
Yeah, so now the question becomes, what does he have?
Yeah.
We know he's running double Vera, but okay. It looks like it's just a Black Sky Harbinger, which does threaten lethal on the next turn. So
yeah, very true. It does threaten lethal, but now that we've gotten power all the way up to 8, Shadowfire's going to have to answer all these Yetis. He will have to block all of these. And even then, that unfortunately is not enough. 14 coming through without Shadowfire.
It'll be enough because of the lifesteal.
Yes, very true,
though. He does live another day. Now, how he gets lethal here is another question, especially with Bobart maybe committing more to this board. He could choose not to because, hey, his opponent could magically have the Witch Storm combo here, even though unlikely that he didn't have one piece or the other. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah,
this is finding ways to end this game.
Yeah, this is unfortunate for Shadowfire that he couldn't find a way to close this game out here, and this is a testament to the power of Xenon Obelisk. You put 3 of them down, and you turn even the crappiest 1/1 Yeti tokens into formidable 7/7s.
Yeah, wow. I don't know what's in Shadowfire's hand, but it's clearly not the combo we were referencing. All right, Vera gains him a bunch of life, but certainly not a lot in the face of an army of 7/7 and 8/8s.
Yeah, there's no possible way this is enough. Like that basically made up for one or two of the 7/7s attacking
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, Shadowfire knows it doesn't even need to see the Shimmer Pack, and Bobart Joe squeaks one out there. Really well played by him in terms of navigating that early game where he was a little tight on power and really making the most of every spell at his disposal.
Yeah, he really did know exactly how much life he had to play with there. And while we did see him drop dangerously low on 4 health, he never fell below it. So he picked a good point at which to stop, but knew that he could expend life as a resource for a little bit of tempo.
Yep, this game is generous. It gives you 25 life to start with, and making the most of it is how you win a lot of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw the Felon control player, kind of take over as the aggressive deck there, but ends up backfiring on him a little bit there.
Yeah. Yep. It took a timely Desert Marshal into Vanquish, but that's why you put him in your deck so you can draw him. And that's what Bobart Joe did there.
Yeah, we can check out the sideboarding really quick since we do sideboard after game 1 for this event. And in the sideboard for Shadowfire in this Felon control deck, I'm seeing a Permafrost, an Annihilate, 3 Backlashes, a Lightning Storm, a Lightning Strike, 1 Feeding Time, 2 Rain of Frogs, a Withering Witch, 2 Azendal's Gift, a Snow Crushed Animist, and a Last Word.
So he was only running 3 Witch and 3 Storm main deck and has the extra ones on the side. So you got to imagine those are coming in. You
Yeah,
want the full suite of that. Snow Crush Animist was first really included in Felon Control deck specifically for this matchup, so wouldn't be too surprised to see that card here either. Uh, Apparently, some Felon Control players have been bringing in a Zindal's Gift for this matchup. I traditionally haven't, just because I think it's so important to answer the board in front of you rather what's in their hand when it comes to Shimmering Cambrai, but apparently it's been working out for them. So I'm interested to see what they decide with there.
yeah, it will be interesting to see what he decides here for those. Rain of Frogs is another interesting card that we could possibly see come in this matchup to
The
try and take care of some of the problematic cards.
it can hit the problematic cards in terms of like Xenon Obelisk or say Desert Marshals or whatever. The problem is it's still giving them 1/1 units, which are still actually pretty useful. Uh, the issue is when with Rain of Frogs in this matchup is when it doesn't hit Shimmer Pack or Xenon Obelisk, it's really not that good. Like those 1/1s will still become 3/3s or 5/5s at some point in the future. The other okay hit, I suppose, is Stand Together or something like that. But it's a very risky card, especially that it costs 4 power and doesn't do anything in terms of impacting the board. So it's a very risky card. Although it might be a necessity against a deck with 4 Stand Together. That card is a nightmare for Felon Control to deal with.
Yeah, he may have to pull it in. There are some good hits in there, but I do
Yeah.
agree completely with what you're saying. Where if you don't hit the obelisk or the shimmer pack with it, it does feel pretty bad when you see those 1/1s killing you later when they get turned into 4/4 shimmer packs or buffed up with those obelisks. Like we
Yeah.
just saw 3 obelisks in one game, turning those 1/1 frogs all of a sudden into 7/7s.
Right. It's just it's not it's a card that can be good, but I don't think the risk is worth the reward generally in terms of sideboarding. If your big concern, say, is Stand Together, just bring in the backlashes and accept the fact that they're mostly going to be dead and kind of tax you, but they're just also that important, or something like that.
Yeah, very
It's
true.
it's a tough game to play against Shimmering Cambrai just because they have so many different powerful tools. Using Rain of Frogs doesn't really answer all of them.
So on Bobbert Joe's side, he's got 3 Decays, 4 Combry Healers, 2 Stand Togethers, 4 Storm Lynxes, and 2 Scorpion Wasps. So we know that the Stand Togethers are definitely coming in. They are one of the best cards in this matchup against Felon Control, as you've highlighted.
Right. Yeah, I expect that to come in, and I'm not really sure if anything else will come in. Stormlinks is a super low impact card. It's more of an anti-aggressive card. Same with Combray Healer. I mean, yeah, it's a nice body, but that's not really relevant against Felon Control either. You want to make your spells count, and playing units that just bounce off of 2/5s isn't really where you want to be. It's more of a question of what other weak cards do you have in your main deck that maybe Combrei Healer and Stormlinks would be better with. And just looking over it, I don't see much in that way.
No, I think you're right there. Most of his cards serve a pretty good purpose in his deck, and nothing's really too terribly low impact in this matchup.
Yeah.
Only thing to note is maybe the Vanquishes, but they're already coming out for the stand-togethers, I would assume.
Right. The Vanquish is nice in that it kills Champion of Cunning and Vera, but that's about it. It doesn't kill anything else until the Champion of Cunning already becomes a problem. So it's really not the proactive card you're looking for. You'd rather just establish your board and have stand together really buff it up and keep it strong.
Yeah, so we will see if these players' sideboard plans impacted the remaining or following games as it would be, because we are about to get into game 2 here with Bobbert Joe up 1-0 over Shadowfire.
Yep. And he's got a hand of nice fixing and decent threats. None of really the namesake cards of his deck are featured, but still, these are the players that get the job done.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is kind of the power of the Combrei aspect of the Shimmering deck. Like it derives its name from Shimmer Pack, obviously the Elysian strategy, but of course the second part of its name coming from Combrei, where you get to play all of these very, very powerful threats. Desert Marshal to shut your opponent's units down, and cards like Marshal Ironthorn to ramp along your strategy.
Yeah, Desert Marshal is just such a powerful card. I know there aren't any purely modal spells in this game yet, but Desert Marshal is about as close as you're going to come to a Swiss Army knife, where it just does so many different things and it does it so efficiently.
Yeah, very true. Desert Marshal, I know it was highlighted in the last series, shutting down units like Umber Reaper and Soulfire Drake. In this matchup, it can shut down the Bloodcasters. It can shut down the Steward of the Past. It can shut down Harbingers. It just puts in a lot of work for a 2-cost unit.
Right. So, yep, we've just no turn 3 play for Bobbert here. And hey, the Rain of Frogs come in, and Bobbert just drew a Shimmer Pack off the top. So we'll see if Shadowfire decides to hit the late game power, or maybe take the Desert Marshals so he doesn't have to deal with that headache. I don't expect him to take the. Now, I don't know what's in Shadowfire's hand, so I don't know what he can or cannot deal with. But he's got an interesting decision here to make. Like I said, the ideal thing to hit is Xenon Obelisk. That just makes the rest of your deck so much more reliable, like Lightning Storm or Stand Together. He's not seeing either of those cards, so now you've got to settle for what's the next best thing here to take.
Yeah, and I feel like the next best thing probably is going to be this Shimmer Pack, but that was actually the other card I was going to touch on, is maybe the Marshal Ironthorn was the consideration, that he's too worried about the ramp getting out of control for Bobbert Joe.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said, I don't know what Shadowfire's hand is, so maybe he just doesn't have a good answer lined up for Ironthorn, and he just feels he can deal with the rest of whatever his opponent's doing in hand. Maybe he took out some number of Annihilates or something. It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this 5/5.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Interesting here that he chose the 3/3 out of the Marissan's Disciple. I feel like I possibly would have gone for like the Locust here, maybe, to try and push some like air damage.
Is it makes your board even weaker to Lightning Storm. Obviously, the 3/3 can't push through a 2/5 either, but you're banking on drawing a. Shadowfire may have just drawn that Annihilate. I doubt he would have frogified a. Interesting. Yeah. I imagine he just drew that Annihilate. I don't think he would have turned a 5/5 annihilated target into a frog if he had the Annihilate in hand already.
No, certainly not. I'm in agreement with you there. That must have been a pickup off the top of his deck. There would have been no reason for him to really take that Marshal Ironthorn otherwise. We see this Desert Marshal coming down and silencing. Ooh, and we see Bobbert Joe getting aggressive.
He's going to kill this staff, is what he's doing. By turning that Talir's Favorite into a 1/3 means he can kill this staff, and by buffing up the other units. So he just doesn't want Shadowfire to get any cards off this staff. He's probably going to have to silence this Felon Bloodcaster at some point anyways. And plus, getting 4 units with Aegis is pretty good value. So Shadowfire basically knows what's in Bobbert's hand at this point, except he draws another stand together off the top. Wow.
That second stand together could be super clutch here. We
Yeah,
might see that come in. We might see that come in big here. But really, the biggest thing I'm noting out of Bobber Joe is like he's gotten to 8 power unimpeded, and this Shimmer Pack is set to come down next turn.
The awkward interaction here with stand together though is that if you use Shimmer Pack after you've stood together, they lose the Aegis again. So you've got this kind of awkward turn where if you choose to Shimmer, I don't think he's going to be choosing the Shimmer Pack anytime soon. Upgrading 3/3s to 4/4s isn't a big deal. But okay, he gets to use it here to save a unit anyways with another Annihilate from Shadowfire.
Yeah, this does bring up an interesting point though, where some of these units, the Shimmer Pack is barely doing any work here. Like the difference between a 3/3 frog with Aegis and a 4/4 frog without it is pretty minimal, honestly.
Yeah, but he's still choosing to slam it down here. It at least deals with the Harbinger, although you did draw a Sandstorm Titan and your opponent just showed you 2 Annihilates. He's just taking the most aggressive line to get the best attacks in here. And just let's Shimmer Pack do its thing here.
Yeah, all things considered, if Shadowfire can find some removal here or something he can slam down, a Withering Witch is definitely a good start. He can start to take control of this board again.
And Bobber Joe did choose to keep in Vanquishes. I guess he was just slightly scared of, the Vera plus Champion of Cunning top end may be tough for the Shimmer Pack deck to go over the top of.
Yeah, quite possibly. We do see Shadowfire did have the follow-up take care of all these Shimmer Packs. And all of a sudden, Bobber Joe's board is, he can stall for now, but it's not looking so hot anymore.
Yeah, and Shadowfire must have some other big spells in hand. I mean, he's been stuck on 6 power, and bam, the fully buffed Champion of Cunning is here. Means you can vanquish that 5/5 flying lifesteal, but that's not going to deal with the rest of the board that Bobber Joe's looking at right now. Uh, Decay came in, but I guess he was anticipating the Staff of Stories, and also the last word is a big one. So not too surprising to see a Decay here, but not what you want to draw in this situation either.
Yeah, definitely not. More or less a dead draw currently, depending on what Shadowfire has in his hand. And Bobber Joe in a very interesting situation here. Now he's got to choose where he really wants to point this Vanquish. It's very tempting to just get it at the Harbinger to take it off board, but if you do that, you're kind of admitting that you're never going to get this big 7/5 Champion of Cunning off board. It's just going to keep buffing the rest of your units for the rest of the game.
The problem by not using Vanquish here, though, is that I mean, even if you just sit in with it in hand and let the champion to do its thing, and you finally answer the champion, the rest of his board's insanely large. I mean, you're kind of just in a no-win scenario here, and yeah, Bauer's gonna shoot off the Vanquish and scoop it up.
Yeah, he will shoot off the Vanquish and scoop it up. Interesting to note there on that last attack, Shadowfire actually playing very smartly, worried about things like Scorpion Wasp, deciding to hold back his Champion of Cunning there from the attack.
Oh yeah, no reason to throw in the Golden Goose, and plus it does trade with Sandstorm Titan, and maybe that's not ideal either. So.
Yeah, but very, very well played by Shadowfire, our control player there. Players getting back into doing a little bit of boarding now that they've tied the series up 1-1.
Yeah, and I think we just saw Bobbert immediately take out that Decay and realize that it might be tough to deal with the last word, but you'll just have to hope to kill him before you cross that bridge.
Yeah, definitely. Decay, an interesting inclusion there. Gotta say, not a huge fan of it. While you can have some huge blowouts, like you're saying, with the last word and maybe some of the stabs, it looks pretty dead in your hand most of the time. So, yeah, not surprised that he's going to go back and take that out. Curious to see if he ends up pulling those Vanquishes out. They seem to work that game, but at a point where it kind of didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I think if your plan is I am on 4 stand-togethers, you just need to maximize your board presence to complement those stand-togethers. Instead of trying to play answers to your opponent's threats, just maximize your threats and protect them. And I think Bobbert in that game kind of was sending a mixed plan, and he got bit for it.
Yeah, unfortunate there, but he did win the first game, so we are tied up at 1 game apiece. Felon Control, interestingly enough, does get significantly better after sideboarding. This matchup, not exceptionally so with how Shadowfire has constructed his list, but in general, I would say Felon Control is one of the most powerful decks after the sideboard.
Yeah, it certainly helps. Although this version, because it's a bit more proactive with Champion of Cunning, that isn't it's not as pronounced how powerful it can be post board, but still, it's more just being able to tool the exact removal suite and answers that you want. That is very useful. But as we saw, there was still a lot of debate in terms of how to use Rain of Frogs and some other.
Yeah, I that was very interesting that he had the Rain of Frogs included in there. I'm curious what would have happened if Marshall Ironthorn had actually come down on.
Yeah, like I said, we didn't have the knowledge of what was in Shadowfire's hand, so there's not a whole lot to comment on there other than he ended up eventually having Annihilates, and here he is stuck on triple primal, it looks like, and Robert Joe's just curving out, not with the most impressive stats and beaters until this Sandstorm Titan showed up, but still they're units with stats.
Yeah, and lucky for Shadowfire, he did find a way to play a Shadow Sigil, so he was able to at least annihilate off that Sandstorm Titan to reduce some of this damage. And we see Bobber Joe getting really aggressive here, getting this
Yeah.
stand together down to buff these units up to try and push that extra 2 damage a
And
turn.
And this is what I was talking about before, where stand together just once you have units, it doesn't really matter what those units are, just get aggressive with them and get going. And that's what Bobbert's doing here. Now his board, now that he has stand together up again, he's not too worried about the double lightning storm. I think that's why he's holding up here. And guess he shoots off this Desert Marshal here to add more to this board. Not sure what you'd save it for, but this is Shadowfire stuck on 4 and is getting beaten to death by an Aegis Scorpion. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, Shadowfire, interestingly enough, if he did pick up a 5th Primal Sigil, would have been able to at least get the champion down, block this Scorpion Wasp, but going to be having problems in the meantime.
Yeah. All right. So he plays the staff to at least gain a little life and get a cycle off. It looks like it's going to be really hard for Bobber to kill this staff here. He'll be able to take a little chunk out of it. But
yeah, but it looks like unless Bobbert, okay, so Bobbert is going to throw or fire off the stand together to make sure the staff goes down in 2 turns.
Yeah.
Barring any other interaction.
Yeah, but boy, this is an interesting one. All right, so there's a bunch of Aegis popped. Stand together number 3 is in Bobbert's hand, but he's also really tight on power right now. Doesn't have that primal source yet either, so he needs to find both that. Oh man, and yeah, the aggression of the Wasp continues.
Yeah, I kind of like the Desert Marshal there instead of trying to bait the stand together. Like, he could have actually gotten a pretty decent trade where he would have kept the Scorpion Wasp, but he had to leave the staff up if he did that. And I think Bobber Joe recognizing that giving Shadowfire more draws may be how he loses this game.
The problem with that line is that you don't get to hold up stand together, and that means a Scorpion Wasp can die to removal, and that's what happens here. And Shadowfire taking a pretty bold attack here with this Steward of the Past. I realize getting in chip damage is nice, but I don't know if it's worth it when you're at 11. Now Shadowfire might just have another Steward in hand, and I think he's probably just saying, hey, I'm okay with, yeah, there it is, with just having one deadly unit held back, and that's what we're seeing here.
And Bobber Joe very fortunately picking up that Huru banner so that he can get his primal and get these Yetis in play.
This is scary though, because he's tapped out. So does Shadow have the dagger here in the form of, yep, there it is. Lightning Storm bringing down the hammer. And this is going to be real hard to recover from. Stand Together, a great card in this matchup, but not when you're tight on power and having to use it in the windows that are afforded to you. And that's what gets demonstrated here.
Yeah, and pushing 9 damage through here, Bobber Joe realizing he's going to have to keep this Desert Marshal on his side if he wants to get a Shimmer back up, and realizing that, yeah, he's just flat out of the game, I guess, from his perspective.
Yeah.
It would have been insanely hard for him to claw back into it.
Right. Yep. Stand together is nice when you have the board established and can hold it up, but drawing 3 of them, as we saw in those past 2 games, is a lot worse than drawing maybe 1 or 2 of them and an obelisk as well, where at least the obelisk, that static effect, helps keep your scouting party when you finally play it out of lightning storm range or out of harbinger range. And
Yep.
there you're trying to start a party and it's not going to happen.
No party being started there. Immediately shut down by the lightning storm when he decided to tap out all his power to get that scouting party down. So we'll see if Bobbert Joe can recover now that he's down 2-1 to Shadowfire on this Felm control list.
All right. Well, he's got the combo of party and shimmer pack, and he's got the power to get there. It's really a question of what's happening all between there. It's
Yep.
going to be a slow start, it looks like, again.
Yeah, it'll come down to what Shadowfire can really do. And of note, Shadowfire's been hitting his influence pretty well up. So if he can get one of these big champion of Cunnings down early with the Aegis and the buff on it, it's possible with Bobbert's slow hand that we could see that scale out of control.
It's possible. Being on the play could be either very good or very bad for Shadowfire, depending on his hand. And it definitely helps this Rain of Frogs. Again, we don't know what Shadowfire's hand is, but man, taking Stand Together or Scouting Party, I think, has to be what's on his mind here. Those are the big, tough to answer ones.
This is super juicy. Like this is a super juicy Rain of Frogs.
This is exactly what you want to see when you do cast Rain of Frogs. I said there's a risk versus reward. This is the high reward where you get your choice of, do I want to take their best spell in Scouting Party or the most annoying spell for me to deal with in Stand Together or their big finisher in Shimmer Pack. I don't think you take the Shimmer Pack here just because it doesn't deal with the fact that they can still draw Xenon Obelisks moving forward. And yeah, instead he opts to take the Scouting Party. I think that's super reasonable.
Yeah, I think so as well. We do see, interestingly enough, Bobbert picking up that Sandstorm Titan, though, so he's going to be able to get that down, and Shadowfire is going to have an Annihilate running around in his hand to be able to take care of this, or a Death Strike, but some sort of hard removal to make sure this Sandstorm Titan doesn't just kind of beat him to death. Shadowfire, I really wish we could see his hand, because I'm just so curious as to what all these answers are.
I'm sure Bobbert wishes he could see that hand too.
Yeah,
okay.
that would.
Wow, Seek and nothing, and Bobbert rips a Xenon Obelisk off the top. That's some good stuff. Wow.
Yeah. Oh wow, and no Death Strike to follow either. I figured when he passed, maybe he had a Death Strike or an Annihilate for the Sandstorm.
So he's basically got a hand of, I guess, 5+ drops is what Shadow's on. So not being able to leverage a slow start or answer the threats from Bobbert here is gonna be tough. He knows he's got to deal with the Stand Together at some point as well, but instead all he can get down is a Champion of Cunning, and that's not looking too good here. I mean, that was his window maybe to answer what Bobbert was playing, because now Bobbert's going to be able to afford to hold up the Stand Together basically the rest of the game. He's ahead on board and can just kind of develop his power and take his time, and that's going to be a really tough thing for Shadowfire to navigate.
Yeah, certainly. Shadowfire is going to have to draw running removal rather to actually get this Sandstorm Titan down, and in the meantime, he's going to be taking the beats from this. I mean, this 6/7 can attack unimpeded. It can be stopped for a turn by the Champion of Cunning currently, but that's not very attractive play to just go ahead and throw your 5-drop under the Sandstorm Titan. And we see Shadowfire lacking 2 Shadow influence in order to get the buff off of the champion as well.
Yeah. So yeah, this is playing out how we were saying, where Orch just gets to hold up Stand Together the rest of the game while he's ahead on board, and this is the nightmare for Felm. I guess at least the second champion gives them a nice double block here. But
yeah,
the problem is the rest of Bobbert's board is going to push through a lot of damage on the back of this Stand Together.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like he has to make the decision now. Now this is the critical decision. Does he continue to keep the Stand Together up, which you, in all reality, should, or does he get greedy and try and use Find the Way to ensure that, oh, well, no, Find the Way comes in depleted sense of how he had to play his
Yeah.
power, actually. Well, in that case,
Yeah.
there's no argument here.
Basically, if Bauer wants to keep up this aggression, he can A space and stand together. The nice thing is you're not worried about a double lightning storm because all of your units become 3/3s with Aegis. But apparently he still wants to play around some other combination of spells that maybe I can't think of, like triple lightning storm or something, and just prefers to play it safe. He knows the obelisk next turn is also going to be active, so choosing this opening off a wow. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really interesting. And Shadowfire actually might get a chance to. Backlash.
bam.
Ooh,
All right.
that is really big. That could be a slight turnaround for Shadowfire if he has something to follow it up with.
Wow, into Annihilate. Yeah, that's huge because remember, Bobert was about to hit 8 power here. So he was basically going to have lethal. If Shadowfire didn't hit exactly Annihilate there. And yeah, that timing of the stand together may be costly. Now, of course, it wasn't because his opponent had backlash. I guess the timing didn't really matter except using it last turn. But, yeah, backlash getting the job done here, and that's not to say Shadowfire is going to win this game now. Bobart still has a ridiculous board presence and a shimmer pack in hand, so Shadow needs to deal with this board. And Stewart's a guy with a body, but it's there.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be hard. I mean, with all these getting turned into 6/6s, he doesn't have enough units to block 2 of them, right? So that will be
Yeah.
lethal, I believe.
Yep, this is lethal. So Shadowfire tried to make a game of it there and did a pretty good job of it, but Obelisk plus Shimmer Pack is just so much damage. Didn't have his sweepers, and yeah, Champion of Cunning good at finishing games, but not always going to, as we see here. It's still just a 5/5 at the end of the day. And yep, the dinosaurs get in.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that Shimmer Pack got pushed to 8 because most of the time now you'll have a Xenon Obelisk in play, and it means that the +2/+2 buff will be active. Whereas in the olden days when you played Shimmer Pack, you were generally casting it on 7, and you were 1 power short of actually having that +2/+2 activation, which made your Shimmer Pack units just a little bit smaller. It wasn't a huge difference, but sometimes that 1/1 on 5 or 6 units really would have made a difference, and that actually was one of those situations.
Yeah, I mean the nerf is still pretty significant in that now they don't have access to the free wins of like your 6-drop Yeti scouting party immediately into Shimmer Pack. Even if you just have an obelisk that's not fully buffed, they're still becoming like 5/5s, and that's often lethal. Like you're just going from 8 attack from this one card to 20 attack is a lot, or 16 attack. So it's a small but still significant change in certain games, like the crazy curve out kill you on 7. Like now, Shimmer Pack's not killing on 7 as often. It's mostly has to wait till that magic number 8, as we've seen in these games. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's a very nice light change that I think was really well done by Direwolf Digital.
yeah, props to DWD for that one. Nice quality of life change for everybody. Didn't kill the Shimmer Pack deck certainly, but yeah, slowed it down a little bit. Made it not so unfun to play against, where it's just like you see the scouting party come down on 6 and you just that audible groan of here it comes.
Yeah. So Bobbert Joe coming out with just developing his resources here. It's got a crystallize in hand. That can be a scary card. And Shadowfire again, not doing a whole lot on the early turns, but hey, Steward's a Steward.
Yeah, Steward's a body in play that will help him block some of this early aggression. But Bobbert Joe, because Shadowfire not really doing too much, gonna go ahead and take some time to establish that
Yeah.
Xenon Obelisk.
Always
And
sad to play a completely unbuffed Champion of Cunning, but sometimes that's just the hand you have. And geez, silencing and permafrosting it just does not want to deal with it.
yeah, making sure he does not have to play around that unit anymore this game.
Yeah.
That 5/5 silence champion just going to be locked down on the ground.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, for Bobbert Joe, he'll have the ability to produce these tokens and then crystallize the next turn if they don't get blown up by the lightning storm.
Yeah, he opts to not get blown out by lightning storm. You're already at 6 power. 2 more means the lightning storm won't do it, and I think he's just wisely deciding, you know what, if this scouting party gets nuked, I have really no chance of winning, so it's not worth that risk.
Yeah, definitely a very smart decision out of Bomber Joe. You can tell he's played this deck a lot. We've seen him make this choice multiple times today to go ahead and hold on to his scouting parties extra long to make sure that he does have that 8th power and the Xenon in play.
Ooh, Shadowfire with a questionable ordering here if he's planning on attacking. If he chose to play this champion pre-combat, you really shouldn't attack, because then your opponent doesn't get the window to Desert Marshal, as we see here, before the buff happens. So yeah, this way at least gets the buff in. If he wanted to swing with Stewart, he could have. He just should have played the Champion of Cunning post combat.
Ooh, interesting. We see Shadowfire with the Aegis getting put on his face, picks up the Mistveil Drake, which will be a 6/6, but he's going to have to find an answer for this Titan in the meantime to actually get it back off the ground.
Yeah, and Bobbert opting, to go for lethal. Seems wise, but is there a backlash in Shadowfire's hand?
Ooh.
Yes, there is.
Ooh, we see these backlashes coming in huge here. Didn't win the game last game on this stand together, I think, but it did come in handy this time around. Like, these backlashes have been pretty crucial. Excellent card in the matchup.
Yeah, it was key there in dodging lethal, but Shadowfire still, swinging back. I mean, Shadowfire still needs a way to manage this board. Again, we have no idea what's in his hand. He's played 10 power. Boy, this is a tenuous spot, man. If he's thinking of attacking, what could he possibly have? I guess attacking kind of signals a Black Sky Harbinger, in that if the Sandstorm Titan blocks the 7 attack unit, it gets cleaned up by that 8th point of damage. That would be how I'm interpreting it from Bobbert's perspective.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I really do think it is probably a Black Sky Harbinger floating around, and Shadowfire was hoping to get that 7/5 into the Sandstorm Titan. If Bobbert's been playing as well as he has all day, though, I have to imagine he will be predicting that and would have blocked differently.
Right. I think Shadow wisely recognizes that his opponent's not going to make that mistake, and instead save Harbinger, maybe hit 11 power and do the Witch Harbinger combo or something like that. But Bobbert is going to press the issue and get some Yetis down.
Yeah, and this is going to be quite a problem for Shadowfire. And yeah, hitting the island's favor is unfortunately not what he is looking for here. Ooh, Vara. Ooh, but nothing to activate to go with her. And we see a second obelisk come down. I think that's just going to game.
It's going to be hard for Shadowfire to deal with. He's got 5 blockers available to...
Yeah, if he blocks all the highest... If he blocks all the highest power units, he'll only take 20.
Yeah.
But the way he's blocking currently is him dying.
He has to let the Yetis through is the issue here. To live.
Which is kind of like dying anyway when you know that Bobbert's going to draw 4 cards off the back of it.
Yeah. You have to block all the... Let's see here. Yeah, 5, 4 get through. Yeah, you have to let through every Yeti to live, I believe. Or all but one Yeti and go.
Yeah. I was about to say you can afford to let 1 go by, but what's the difference between drawing 3 and drawing 4? Cases?
Yeah, especially when you're only drawing 1 card off the top here. And yeah, it is correct to block 1 so that your either Vara or Mistveil Drake survives. I imagine you want your Vara to survive. The problem then becomes you still don't have a Withering Witch or a Black Sky Harbinger anywhere in your yard, so drawing one or the other doesn't give you the out of wiping the entire board. So this is going to be a tough one for Shadowfire to get out of.
Yeah, if he had the Black Sky Harb in the yard, like if he had it in his void, it would have been possible to use the Withering Witch and then bring it back into play for the combo, correct? Is that how the order works?
Yeah, now he still has an out of Wisdom into Witch into Storm. You can cast all of those at the same time, but that's a very narrow out, and Shadowfire does not get it.
Yeah, unfortunate for Shadowfire going down there to Bobbert Joe in the end. So that we saw that go
That
3-2 in Bobbert's favor. Very, very close last game there for part of it,
oof,
but
yeah.
eventually just kind of taken over, unfortunately. Shadowfire just not quite finding the answers, and that's always the drawback to playing Felon
Oh
control in
yeah.
this game is sometimes you just don't draw perfectly.
And I think those last pair of wins kind of highlighted what I was talking about with the Shimmer Pack plan of just be proactive, be proactive, be proactive. Never needed anything like a vanquish. Eventually, you just overwhelm them if they can't find the right answers. Yes, the backlashes were really awesome and clutch, but it didn't matter if the shadow if the Fountain Control deck didn't have a sweeper to clean up the mess that was still there.
Yeah, we saw just so many units down on Bobbert Joe's side, and those Xenon Obelisks just buffing everything up multiple times. 2 Xenon Obelisks in that game, basically won in almost every single game. The first game was 3. Those cards are just putting in massive work for the Shimmering Combry deck, getting all those units to be so huge that Shadowfire just had to find basically hard removal for even the littlest 1/1 tokens.
Right, right. Yeah. As we saw, the patience with that scouting party ended up making it really sticky towards the end. Just really well played by both players, really. Like I said, it was kind of hard to tell the best lines Shadowfire could have taken because we didn't know exactly what was going on in his hand, but it seemed well played on both ends.
Yeah, he seemed to navigate the matchup very well. I will definitely give him credit for that. Possibly just some unfortunate draws, not a lot of witches and storms that you're looking for in that matchup, but definitely well played by him and definitely very well played by Bobbert Joe. He got a 3-2 victory there over Shadowfire to give his team at least a 1-0 advantage. Do we have the results? Bobbert Joe's team actually does win 2-1. So Bobbert Joe coming in, helping out there, contributing one of their 2 wins. So we will have Always Lucky Bobbert Joe's team finals now.